Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm an ecologist, photojournalist, and National Geographic explorer. Thanks for joining me on this conversation where I speak to Elisabeth Henschel, who's a fellow National Geographic explorer, and she studies fishes. She's based in Rio, and the whole idea of this conversation is for me to meet interesting people who are passionate about what they do and to share it with you so that hopefully we can learn something together.
Yeah, sure.
There we go. Hi, Elizabeth. So this is very exciting for me because it's actually the first time that we are talking face to face.
Debbie, I'm also very happy to be here talking to you face to face for the first time. I think it was a great opportunity to connect with other explorers, Net Geo explorers during the webinar.
I was looking at your ArcGIS story maps of your expedition into the Amazon, and I think it looked like this time last year you were preparing to go to the field.
Yeah, last year, exactly a year ago, I was planning to do my Net Geo funded expedition to the Amazon, which before like the biggest expedition of my life, because I already spent a month before in the Amazon, but not exactly funded by such a huge institution, so it was very special for me.
It's a big contrast to where we are today right now, like in our homes. How is it going for you?
When I go to the field, I feel very much re-energized. So it's a really important part for me, not only for collecting specimens for my research, but also like psychologically, to keep my mood going, to keep my interest going. Yeah, so I mean, it's a really big difference because I don't feel like I am excited for pretty much anything. I'm just excited for the situation to be over so I can go back to my research. And I don't know how you feel about it, but it's weird. Also because I wasn't living here in Brazil, so I needed to go back home. So the last month for me, it was like a huge impact on my life in terms of readapting to my now new reality that is going back home and not being able to go outside. Yeah, I don't know how you feel about it, but yeah, for me, I can say it's somewhat painful.
So you are an exchange program in New York.
Yeah.
What were you doing there?
So I was spending a year supposedly at the museum, the American Museum of Natural History in New York, where I was doing part of my research in there. But due to the outbreak, I needed to come back here, and I spent only 4 months in there.
I don't know about you, but 4 months for me is like I'm still adjusting, right?
Yeah, it's awful because adjustment comes in so many different ways. So it goes from, for example, in my 3rd month in there, I was just getting used to my new bed, to my new pillow, to my new space. And yeah, and I also think that 4 months is the time when your bonds with people start to get deeper. So I was consolidating many friendships, many work. So yeah, so I kind of had to live in the middle of that process. But yeah, I think that come back home might be positive in some ways, because once I go back again to New York, I will already know how things work. So I think the adjustment time is going to be shorter than it was this time.
Are there any interesting freshwater fish in New York?
No.
Well, I guess when your
No,
field site is the Amazon, maybe New York.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I can say I have the greatest reference when it comes to freshwater fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit unfair with other places.
Okay, I don't know much about freshwater fish. I like some fish. I know a little bit about some fish. Today I was just learning about this fish called a queen danio. I think it's related to zebrafish. And the only reason I learn about that fish is because I'm writing this book now for kids. It's about animals of Southeast Asia, and we needed an animal for the letter Q, which
amazing.
is extremely difficult. So I found this fish, and I think I'll put it in the book just because it's an interesting fish. Because what I understand from aquarists is that, did I say that right? Aquarists? What do you call the people who look after fish? Aquarius?
Aquarists, I guess. Yeah, I mean, Portuguese would be something
Okay.
like that. But,
Yeah, so I was like, I'm reading the websites of Aquarius, and apparently this fish lives in a very narrow temperature, just from like 23 to 25 degrees.
it's
Um,
really warm.
yeah, so maybe I should ask you, what does that mean? What does it mean when they say that the fish lives in that temperature zone? Does that mean like it gets heat stroke above that? What happens if the temperature changes too hot or too cold?
Yeah, so what happens that the fish metabolism change. So you, depending on the range of the temperature that the fish can stand, you can have some metabolic changes. So the fish sometimes won't be able to breathe properly, it won't be able to have its own normal behavior that it would have, and their temperature that it is used to live in the nature. So yeah, we can have some metabolic differences. So every time you keep an aquarium, you gotta take a close look to what kind of fish are you gonna keep. Yeah, it's a somewhat hard task. I gotta say that I'm not definitely not the aquarium person. So I only kept an aquarium last year before I went to the US, where I kept the fish that I study, the kangaroos.
So it's a catfish, so I imagine that they like dark water.
Depends, but yeah, they are usually associated with some kind of substrate. And we can say that they are nocturnal species usually.
Oh.
So you will find them more easily during the night.
Okay, so you are walking in an Amazon river at night catching fish. What?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. How deep are you in the water?
that's a good question because I mean the fish are there, but in the Amazon we have different seasons. So we have the dry season and the wet season. So during the wet season, the rivers are really, really full of water. So it's really difficult to catch this tiny, relatively tiny fish during the wet season because I mean I cannot reach the substrate of the river when it's when it's raining a lot. So I usually go to the field during the dry season, which I can say is between late August to the beginning of December to early December. So when you go during the dry season, I mean, you can have a river that is like 15 centimeters deep, which is really easy for you to work in.
Okay, I want to talk more about the fish, but as you were tying your hair, I was checking out your tattoos. And I think we got to talk about that. What is going on in that arm?
So yeah, what happens here in this arm is that I can say I kind of dedicated this arm to my tattoo. So I have a medusa here, and I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah. Wow, that's
so amazing. And I also really like surrealistic art. So this is a René Magritte piece.
Wow.
And here I have a macaw from
Beautiful.
the Amazon.
Nice. Yeah. Wait, there's no fish. No fish on your arm.
I do have. No, not in my arm, but I do have fish here.
Oh wow! What is that? Wait, looks like probably. I'm gonna guess wrongly. It's not a cichlid, is it? No, it's not. So embarrassing.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Oh my gosh! Yes.
Yeah, you're right. It's a cichlid. I did the cichlid because I was like, okay, I think I reached some point that I need a fish tattoo, but I don't feel like tattooing a catfish. They're not that much interesting in terms of aesthetic for a tattoo. So I just asked my friends at lab, like, what do you think I should get? And one of them, of course, he worked with cichlids. So he was like, yeah, just do a cichlid.
What is it like working in the Amazon?
That's a really intense experience because when you think about Amazon, you're not thinking about a uniform environment because the Amazon is huge. So depending on where you go, you will have a different experience. So for example, this year I described a new species that I found in a small stream that was surrounded by farms.
Wow.
So the river was almost destroyed itself. So sometimes people that owns farms, they don't allow you to go into their property. So sometimes you know that an interesting there is an interesting river or pond or lake inside the person's property, but you won't be allowed to go in. It's really hard, the environmental situation here in Brazil. So sometimes lots of landowners, they don't want biologists or any kind of research inside their properties because they are afraid that this can affect their productivity, for example.
Yeah.
But and when you go to more untouched places, you can meet indigenous people, which I had like two interesting experiences with that. And sometimes you can meet local fishermen communities. And these local communities with like really simple people, I think it's better to work and talk to them than to landowners, because they are more open-minded in terms of they are really interested that people go to their area and see what's going on and pay attention and call attention to what's happening there. And also, since that they have a really close relationship with nature, they really enjoy being there with you and watching and sometimes even helping you doing the field work. So yeah, you have like different experiences depending on where you go. And when it comes to different animals, I've seen lots of really, really interesting animals other than fish. So for example, here in South America, we have our black caiman. We've seen already sloth. And last year, I was in the Pantanal with a friend doing field work, and we took a boat during the night to collect some catfish, and we faced onça pintada, which is like a jaguar here, was a huge female. And also we have, I forgot the name of this animal in Portuguese. I'm sorry, of course I know in Portuguese, but I don't know in English. We call it ariranha. Let me see if I can find a proper translation for it. English. Oh, giant otter. 2 or 3 of them. And they are fishing and swimming. They are really fantastic animals. And also river dolphins. We see river dolphins basically everywhere here.
Oh.
And once I had a chance to touch them. Yeah, they're so cute.
That's insane. And I'm just so curious. You said like some of the indigenous people, they come to see how you catch the fish. And how does that compare with how they catch fish?
Every time we met local fishermen or or indigenous people that are used to fish, I feel really ridiculous because we are all dressed up as biologists, long sleeves, trousers, boots, hats, full of equipment, and they're just like natural for them, so natural to be there, to live there, and it's their environment. But it's really nice, and sometimes they just also keep a look at what we're doing, because I'm pretty sure these people had lots of bad experience with people that only go there to explore and to make money out of their natural resources.
What kind of resources would be in those areas?
Oh yeah, when you talk about Amazon, I think the major concern that's happening right there now is gold mining. So you have lots of gold mining areas that are located nearby indigenous communities, and you have lots of conflicts between gold miners and local indigenous communities, because also there's a huge matter when it comes to public health, because indigenous populations are usually much more vulnerable to lots of white people disease. So when they are in touch with the gold miners, sometimes you can accelerate the spread of many diseases. And especially when you think about coronavirus, that's being a huge problem here right now. So gold miners are actually spreading coronavirus among indigenous communities, and they are really fragile to that, because sometimes they can even handle the flu or a common cold, So when you think about the virus that are killing lots of people in developed countries, can you imagine how difficult it should be for local communities that are far away from big cities, far away from hospitals and any kind of services? Our government now is making it easier for people to explore our natural resources here. So I think the gold mining exploration has increased a lot during the last few months here. And since people are paying attention to other stuff that's happening right now, but here in Brazil now, lots of people are, especially the government, are like, how can I say, not respecting the tra- tra- indigenous communities, and how indigenous communities are also really associated with conservation of many areas here. So usually when you have an indigenous territory, it means that this territory is also more protected when it comes to fauna and flora. So they play an important role in conservation as well, but it's definitely not a priority for our government here now. Our government now are making it harder for you to obtain permissions to go to the field, and also I feel that landowners and some local people that are working for landowners, they are more hostile against researchers, because sometimes we represent a threat for these people, since we're saying like, oh, this area has a huge potential for biodiversity and conservation, and these people don't really want that. They just want to explore the resource, and in terms of agriculture, gold mining. So sometimes we might have represent a threat for these people. So I can say that it's somewhat dangerous sometimes to go to the field. So I usually go, especially as a woman, I usually go to the field with more 2 or 3 men colleagues, because it can be even hard to communicate.
And when you say hard to communicate, is it just a safety thing, or is it also some dynamic?
Yeah, it's safety and also lack of respect, because sometimes more traditional places and places where people don't have much access to education, they don't understand that, for example, a woman can be the leader of an expedition, you know. So, for example, last year when we went to my Net Geo funded expedition, like I applied for the grant with my project, every time that I needed to talk to someone to obtain a resource, to rent a boat, to rent a car, I was like just giving instructions to my friends, discussing with them, and one of them just went and talked to the person. Because I remember, for example, we were talking to a local fisherman about renting a boat, so he would take us some places to collect fish. And he was talking to my friends, and at some point, I just pointed out something in the conversation, and he turned out to me and he said like, why are you talking to me? I mean, here women are just like for washing clothes and cooking.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, you know what? I'm gonna pay you. I'm the one who's gonna pay. Come on.
Do you think that's getting better though now, like as they see more female leaders in the field? Maybe it'll take a while. It's the same in my field site in Nepal. It's also very hierarchical. For example, whenever we go to town hall meetings, I always have a man who is introducing our work, who's talking to the mayors or the leaders. And many occasions I have sat next to my male colleagues, and it's quite a bizarre experience, because what happens is that they don't talk directly to me, but if they have a question for me, it's passed through my colleague who's sitting right next to me, and then he will ask me. But yeah, like you said, it's just in some of those remote places, it's a culture. It's the way things are done, and it's very hard to expect that. Well, at least my point of view is that it's really hard to expect to go into the field to do research, to work in landscapes where there are native people, and expect so much from them. You know, like they have to interact with us in a way that is our culture. So it's a interesting process, and maybe that's just what I feel like we can do, is just by being present and being respectful and doing good and interesting work, then the community can just see us, as having us as in like women, as having that potential to lead and do work that can be taken seriously.
No, you're completely right, especially when you think about field work. I think many people see field work as an essentially masculine activity, like going to the field, into getting dirty and making lots of physical effort. And when I think, I don't think we can change adults' minds. It's really difficult. But the thing is, when children see us doing these heavy activities and leading and being PhDs, doctors, interesting researchers on the media, on the television, on the internet, that's the first step towards a more open-minded future, even for local communities, because you see the little girls like looking at you, admiring you, despite the adults don't care or don't treat you as like the expedition leader. You see like little children just staring and admiring yourself and getting interested into your work. That's rewarding for me, I guess. It's really rewarding.
All right, speaking of open mind, how do your parents feel about that catfish in your tank now?
I don't have it anymore because I need to go to the US. But at first, my mom was somewhat shocked and she was like, "Oh, do you really want to keep them here? They're so ugly. Oh my God, no, no, no." And I was like, "Mom, it's for research purposes." And she allowed me to. But my grandmother, she definitely doesn't understand why do I study this fish. And my grandmother loves fish. So the first contact with an aquarium that I ever had was with her. And she's always like, "Elisabeth, why do you study such ugly catfish? There's so many interesting fish in the they're disgusting, gross." And I was like, "Yeah, but I achieved so many good things in my life due to this ugly catfish." Come on, they're interesting, but people don't get it.
Oh, what happened to your volunteer work? You were gonna do some volunteer work with the
Yeah.
yeah. What's
Yeah, I
happening with
will.
that?
So I did a quick test, a real-time PCR test for coronavirus. So, and the results came out yesterday and I tested negative. So I'll be able to start my training tomorrow. So tomorrow morning I'll go to the lab. The lab is at my university. So at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, which is like one of the biggest research centers when it comes to research in all terms, but also in coronavirus. So I'll be working in a big lab helping the team to process the test. So yeah, I can say that I'm really glad to make something useful and completely different from my research field just to help fight this pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
That's super exciting, and I'm so happy that you found this opportunity to use your skills to help like the world. And thank you for talking to me about fish. I learned a lot. Take care.
Bye.
Be safe.
You too. Bye. You too.